Chloe Davis. I am a third year Part 1 architecture student at UE. I'm also on the RIBA committee as student liaison. I'm here with Michele Curtis, who did the murals for the Seven Saints of St. Paul's. So yeah, if you could introduce yourself and just say hi.
Hello, I'm Michele Curtis and I am the artist and founder of the Seven Saints of St. Paul's project and Iconic Black Bristolians in Britain's project also.
Amazing, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. We heard that you possibly wanted to be an architect when you were growing up. Can you tell us a little bit about that, why you wanted to be an architect and what stopped you and why you decided to go into art instead?
Well, to be honest with you, I was one of those children, and probably a lot of people can relate to this as well, where I had many talents. So I enjoy in the creative sense. So I enjoyed drawing, I enjoyed music and singing and dancing and sort of acting and performing arts. And when I was in primary school, I struggled a lot with making a decision as to what I wanted to be when I was growing up, which sounds crazy because there's no rush. But there were so many things that I wanted to do and wanted to create and want to be a part of. And one of the things that I absolutely loved, and anybody who still knows me now knows that I love architecture. I love interiors. And I can't go to any city, any country without commenting and admiring the architecture and wondering when it was built, what the purpose of that building was used for, what was there first, in terms of how streets and communities are built. And that's always been something like innate within me. And I didn't pursue it in the end because when I was in school, and we're going back to, the 1980s, late 80s, and then sort of like the 90s, art generally wasn't something that people were encouraged to pursue. It was more of like, that's not a real job. There isn't a career with that. You're either going to be some struggling artist or an art teacher, and teaching didn't really appeal to me, so I didn't want to be an art teacher, but as I said, I really enjoyed architecture, and I remember saying to my tutors that I really wanted to explore being an architecture, and they just looked at me like I was crazy. And I remember I was probably about 14 when I did my first design technology class. And I was in the class and I was, using, I forgot what the triangle kind of ruler is, on the drawing board. And I was just kind of like, I don't understand this. How does this work, And I remember the teacher at that time walked up to me and said, oh, technical drawing isn't for you. And that always kind of stuck with me. And then fast forward to a couple of years later, when I was doing my GCSEs and so forth, I was advised not to take design technology. I was always also very interested in the sciences as well. So I was interested in how art and science could marry. But I was also discouraged from studying the arts and, science. I mean, I love biology, geology, I know that, at the time when I was at school, geography was classified as a humanity as opposed to a science. But in my mind, it was a science to me, the elements of geography that I was interested in. And I was just really discouraged. And I think a lot of that was because I was female. And then also because I was Black as well. And it was just at that time, it was something that a career that wasn't deemed suitable for somebody of my ethnic and cultural background, I guess. But I've often toyed with the idea over the last few years. But essentially, that's why I decided to go into art. And even then, that was 17 years after I had graduated that I decided to go back to art because that was something that I really enjoyed. But I still had all those kind of that stigmatization in the back of my mind that, you know, it's just going to be a hobby. You're not going to be able to do anything with your art, but at least it will give you a peace of mind and an outlet. People that will go looking outside of the boxes in terms of what careers that they could pursue within the sciences is just amazing. Whereas when I was growing up, it was very limited. So yeah, I think definitely more opportunities are available today than there was when I was growing up, for sure.
So your mural, can we talk about why do you feel it was so important for St. Paul's, and you know, what did the community get out of it? You know, what did it bring them together, and the reaction you've had from it, as well as the walking tour that you did for it? Are people still using it, and how have people reacted to that as well?
Okay, so with regards to the location of the project, which is a creative placemaking project, which is a creative practice within its own right, so to speak. St. Paul's, for as long as I can remember at the very least, and obviously speaking to some of the community elders, was a marginalized community. I remember when I was interviewing Roy Hackett, he said that when he first arrived in Bristol, he was in the centre and he had asked somebody where he could go and find somewhere to rent, you know, somewhere to live, because he had just moved to the city. And somebody said to him, you know, you need to go down St. Paul's, that's where you lot are, you know. So and that continued right through, you know, at least until, you know, the turn of the century at the very least. And even today I still see some people kind of refer to St. Paul in a specific light. So St. Paul's was a marginalized community for a very long time. And it was always deemed as a no-go area in Bristol. And then also, there was nothing there, you know, for, you know, one of the oldest communities within Bristol. There was nothing there. Especially when you consider its proximity to the centre of Bristol, there was nothing there. And given the history of the area, with regards to, you know, the transatlantic enslavement of African people, the Windrush generation and people settling in that area and being told that's where you belong, it felt a natural place to kind of do a creative placemaking project to enhance the culture and the heritage of the area, and also invite people into the community to kind of get to know the people and get to know the area. I mean, apparently St. Paul's is only 16 streets.
Really?
But yes, 16 or 18 streets, yes. So when you think about all the stigma attached to such a small area, it actually really didn't make any sense. And I wanted to try and kind of dispel some of those negative connotations, not only with St. Paul's, but also with that community, because the African Caribbean community is what is referred to when people refer to St. Paul's. So there was a lot of stigma attached there.
I find it's a very strong, anytime you go down there, it's a strong community. You can see that everyone supports each other and everyone knows each other, which is amazing. I think it's one of the strongest communities in Bristol, which is amazing, which is why I think I've seen the support for your murals was really, really strong as well. So
yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, obviously being a child of the 80s, I know I grew up in Easton, for example, and that same sense of community isn't there anymore. Yeah. And I think you're right. And I think, you know, that's one of the reasons why I really want people to come down and visit St. Paul's and meet the local people. I mean, a lot of people have found my project through going into St. Paul's and speaking to community people there, and them saying, well, who did these murals? Why is it here? And people have said, oh, it's Michele Curtis. She's a local person. She did this to highlight the achievements and the contributions that we made. And then another big part of the reason why I wanted to have the project in St. Paul's was because I wanted to demonstrate the heritage aspect of the project, and that it is a shared heritage. This history and this heritage is a part of Bristol as a whole, not just one particular area. And thus, you know, it's not just Black history, it's Britain's history. And we all have a stake in that, and we should all celebrate that, because if it wasn't for, you know, people who resided in St. Paul's, or people who had traveled from the Caribbean to the UK, Britain wouldn't be what it is today, you know? And I thought that was really important to try and highlight that.
Yeah, it's about, yours celebrates, you know, culture and heritage and things like that, rather than just labelling Bristol as one thing, which is a slave trade city, which, you know, obviously is important that we don't forget at the same time. So how do you feel about the way Bristol celebrates its street art?
I think it's great. Bristol is definitely renowned worldwide for, you know, their street art, thanks to Banksy, people like Banksy, and many other artists, and especially with Stephen and Upfest movement. But I think, you know, one of the problems generally, and especially, and Bristol is no different, is the fact that you never see any diversity. That's never promoted, because Bristol is a very diverse city, very. And whenever it comes to about, whenever discussions or promotion arise about, you know, Bristol and what they've done and how, you know, we're such a creative city and we're so diverse, but you very rarely see any of that diversity represented in the arts. And I think it's for that reason that the Seven Saints of St. Paul's project was so popular, because nobody had ever seen that before, and nobody had ever really believed that Black history and Black heritage could be so interesting and engaging. One of the biggest barriers that I experienced when I was trying to get this project off the ground was a lot of people were like, well, nobody knows who these people are. I'm not sure if people are going to like having these murals up in the side of buildings. You know, and I was kind of like, well, people don't know them. That's the point of the project, because people should know who they are. And what do you mean people won't want to have these faces up on the side of buildings, even if it is in St. Paul's? Are you saying it's because they're Black people? Nobody wants to see us. They want us to remain invisible. And it was very, very challenging. I said it's so important for everybody to see positive representations of everyone from different cultures, because how do you expect community relations to improve if we don't know anything about each other, you know, or we don't experience other people's cultures or hear their stories and their experiences? And I think it speaks to the diversity within the street art movement. I've seen more now so than ever the emergence of more female street artists, which is something that I never really saw or experienced before at all. And you know, when I've spoken to some of them and I've built relationships with some of them, they have been around for a very long time. They were just never showcased in the media or publicly, because it was all very white male dominated, which is, you know, common for most industries, including architecture, in the UK and the world round. So I think it's great.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this. And the murals are amazing. They've brought people to St. Paul's that don't know St. Paul's, or also, you know, from my experience, people were scared of going to St. Paul's. They didn't know what it was like. They thought they were going to get mugged or anything, you know, it was dangerous. They saw it as dangerous, and it's not at all. It's got such a strong community, and your murals have brought people there and in experiencing the community as well. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.